Hello, this is the introduction to international cinema in the 1970s. As we look into Great Britain, throughout the 70s the British cinema was in total decline. The best directors were working for TV, and a few good productions came along, such as Monty Python or a James Bond movie. Looking over at France, it was mostly chaotic and uncoordinated in the 70s. La Cage aux Folles and its sequel were the all-time top-grossing French films in America. The most impressive talent to emerge would be the director Bertrand Blier, who was a novelist turned filmmaker. His most successful movies starred Gerard Depardieu, France's biggest film star. He found the female psyche vaguely threatening, but somehow understood homosexuality, which several of his movies involved. Now, taking a look in West Germany, the New German cinema was a movement that began in the 60s, reached its full potential in the mid-70s. Most German filmmakers were obsessed with America. A lot of their films had this sort of homemade type of style, which was an example of autorenkingo, which means personal movies by serious artists. Now, as we look at Italy, we see a couple of important directors. Fernando Bertolucci is the son of a poet and film critic. At the age of 20, he won a national poetry prize for one of his volumes entitled In Search of Mystery. His first important film was Before the Revolution. It was made when he was only 24 years old. This chapter talks briefly about his camera effects, which mentions his use of traveling shots. It's kind of a trademark in his films. The cinematographer that he usually used was very gifted, Vittorio Storaro. He was famous for his mobile camera work. Other films that Bernardo worked on would be The Conformist, The Spider Stratagem, and The Last Emperor. Lena Windmiller was an actress, playwright, and director. Her first important movie was The Seduction of Mimi, which won her Best Director award at the Cannes Film Festival. Other noteworthy works of comedy from her would be Love and Anarchy in 1973, All Screwed Up in 1974, Swept Away in 1971, Seven Beatles in 1976, and Blood Feud in 1979. She was especially popular in the United States. Now going over to Eastern Europe, Poland and Hungary, their movies were openly critical of political power, structure, and pointing out just the corruptedness of corruption. In the Soviet Union, the finest films rarely were extreme political flicks. The Soviets were still doing good with literary adaptations and period films. Anything with a political background being kept neutral was considered good. Andrei Tarkovsky was an avant-garde artist, which means difficult or personal, often obscure. His films usually include elements of dreams, visions, stream of consciousness techniques, surrealistic imagery, complex editing styles. In 25 years, he only completed 7 movies. Themes mostly revolved around metaphysical ideas, which means problems and doubt of faith and need to develop of spiritual values. He was constantly hassled by the Soviet authorities. Several films were temporarily shelved, had to be recut, and were strongly criticized by the Soviet cultural establishment. Another director from this time and area was Nikita Mikhalkov. Mostly period films and literary adaptations is what he did. His films spoke towards missed opportunities, people yearning for extraordinary stuff, but fall prey of a simple, easy life. From Australia, the Australian Film Commission gave birth in 1971. Most films were period films, several dealing with colonial heritages and injustices against blacks. Most contained striking panoramas of Australian landscape. Director from this time, Peter Weir, was best known of these filmmakers. He was strong on social consciousness with emphasis of occult myths and legends. This is seen in his 1977 production of The Last Wave. This contains occurrences similar to biblical plagues like huge hailstorms or torrents of water gushing out of strange places. And then we go over to George Miller, who was definitely well known for his Road Warrior series, the Mad Max featuring in 1979, and following that, the Road Warrior in 1982. The Road Warrior, it used elements of many different kinds of films, so it was considered awesome. The movie was emphasized on style over a theme or character. And looking in at the Third World, at that time it was blending Marxism and nationalism. It definitely favored realism, which filmmakers were definitely concerned with exposing injustices of the real world. The Third World is actually categorized as mostly underdeveloped colonies in Latin America, Africa, and Asia. That is all.